Well, good evening and welcome to 16 WAPT's Chronicle Black and White. Tonight we're exploring the elephant in the room, race in Mississippi. I'm Erin Pickens.
And I'm Megan West. You know, Erin, to say the least, race is complicated in Mississippi. There is no question Mississippi has had a dark history of race relations, but over the years, some say we finally have some light at the end of the tunnel. Now, in just the last few months, the state flag is one symbol that some people are rallying behind on two fronts.
There is no denying Mississippi history is linked to civil rights history. They are intertwined because of the assassination of Medgar Evers, the murder of 3 civil rights activists, the riots to try and stop the first black man from enrolling at Ole Miss.
Na, 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 na. Hey, hey, hey. Goodbye.
It was ironic, certainly historic at Ole Miss, the same university where 53 years before they tried to stop James Meredith from enrolling.
The resolution passes, 40 votes in favor, 1 vote opposed, and no abstentions.
The Student Senate decided it didn't want the state flag to fly on campus anymore because of the Confederate battle emblem on it.
A lot of students do pass by here, and I feel like if it's a public institution, then everybody should feel comfortable if they pay for it.
I think they'll feel better, but I think we have to move on and tackle the other problems.
Residents in the Magnolia State still wrestle with the debate over a flag and what it really stands for.
My thing is, that flag's part of my history. It's not going anywhere.
I think that they're impeding on our right to free speech.
When Haley Barbour was thinking about running for president, he had to state what he considered to be obvious truth.
Segregation's indefensible.
You can argue the state has traveled a great distance to correct the failures of the past. It was 41 years to the day after a group killed those 3 civil rights workers, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, that the state finally got a conviction. A judge and jury handed Edgar Ray Killen 20 years for each death. It took 31 years for a court to convict Byron Della Beckwith in the Medgar Evers assassination. In Jackson, work is drawing to a close on a Mississippi History Museum and a Civil Rights History Museum that will stand side by side.
As serious as it was back then, it's still as serious now.
So you think there's still as much racism now as it used to be?
Yes.
Used to be that you wouldn't have anybody in your neighborhood of another race, if you will, and now we have next door neighbors that are the finest people that we've ever seen. And so I think it's a matter of, you know, what the individuals are doing. I don't know.
We are here at the 2015 Mission Mississippi event with 22 pastors from across the country, all gathered here to talk about racial reconciliation. So we'd like to start off with the simple question: what do you hear from your own congregations about the racial divide?
Well, I would say that in our congregation, we deeply believe in the need to let the Church of Jesus Christ personify what heaven will be like in the future. And so to us, it's a matter of doing all we can to reach every ethnicity, every race in our region.
As racial relationships, well, we gotta live together.
You know, I've lived in Mississippi all my life, and I think that race relations are, I think they're good in a way, but in some cases, you know, I think it is divisive. But there's a lot of work to be done on both sides. I think both black and white both have a lot of work to do.
Not everybody knows Hispanic food, and once they meet, they try it, they may like it, they may not. And so it's the same thing with the racial relationships. I mean, you may not like what I do, but that doesn't mean that you need to hate what I do.
But our church has been very resolved that yes, while there is a divide perhaps in the culture some, we're not going there because we believe the cross of Jesus Christ tears down all the walls of racial divide in our country today.
And I think there was a minister earlier who talked about his church being multi-ethnic and several.
Yeah.
At our church, basically, we believe we ought to bloom where we're planted. And my community is very multi-ethnic and multicultural. So therefore, since I've been planted there, I have to meet my community needs. We have Anglos on staff at our church, Arabics on staff at our church, Hispanics on staff at our church to match our community. So I think the best way to be effective for our community, is to be the church of our community.
Let me ask you another question about race relations in Mississippi.
Okay.
Do you think they're better or worse, or what's your opinion on it?
Personally, I think the more the media talks about it, the worse it gets. I think I have such a great relationship with everybody I work with. I'm the minority where I work at, and I don't see a race issue. So, no, I think it's actually better now if people would just leave it alone.
Some of our viewers say that news coverage and the media, they make the race relations situation even worse. What do you all think about that?
I believe we heard someone, speak to that earlier. Yeah.
What's unfortunate is that there are stereotypes that are perpetuated through media. And as a result of that, those stereotypes poison perception. They taint perception, and they cause the general public and population of our country to then regard certain people in certain ways. And that's an unfortunate expression that happens in our country, but it is a reality that we cannot deny. We have to at least acknowledge that it does exist.
Of course, I'm from the New York metropolitan area, one of your major media markets. One of the things that I find most disturbing is that when reports are given on any kind of situation that's relative to race and the victims, or either the perpetrators, and most times the perpetrators are people of color, the news media has a habit of listing that person's background before they do anything else. They read off a list of offenses that that person has been accused of before the report is even given.
One thing I want to bring up, oh, I'm sorry, we'll get to you first. Yeah, sure.
I want to thank you for being willing to cover today, because that's, to me, is a great step of action for getting the full story out concerning the issue. I mean, this is a rare, perhaps historic moment, not just because it's in Mississippi, but because we're talking about pastors and leaders of churches from all over America. And we are very committed to doing everything we can to seeing this issue progress in a relationship of being overcome in our nation's history. And nothing in the history of the past has obviously been marred. But we can't do anything about the past at this moment. But what we can do is change the future. And that's what our goal is, and that's what our heart is to show the country. And I think America needs to be very, very encouraged today that you have men of all races and ethnicities on this platform that are committed to seeing the issue resolved.
Just while we're talking about the media, one thing I do want to bring up, there's been so much coverage over the last year specifically of the Black Lives Matter movement and sort of a clash with an All Lives Matter movement, if you will. Is that something that you guys hear in your own communities, or that you maybe have even addressed with your congregation?
I want to mention again this whole idea about Black Lives Matters. I'm absolutely certain that the persons who actually gave impetus to this movement were persons who felt out of their own pain and the pain of the community that there was a need to emphasize the reality that Black Lives Matter. There ought not to be any kind of conflict between Black Lives Matters, because that has to do with specific instances of what appears to be crime perpetrated on the black community, in some instances by those who are given the right to protect the community. But the bottom line is, all lives matter.
What do you think about Mississippi's race relations compared to other states?
Well, they race everywhere you go. I don't care what the white folks are white folks. I don't care where you go.
You know, you look at the big cities, all the problems they're having in places like Chicago and New York, and you don't really see a lot of that here. Now, I don't know why that is, but I think it's because maybe we're more receptive, but I don't know.
And speaking specifically to race, those pastors who are here from Mississippi, and then of course several of you who are not from this area, Discuss the problem here in Mississippi of race, and then also those who are from other parts of the country. How do you think Mississippi looks to other parts of the country?
I live in Mississippi. I pastor in Clinton. And I would suggest that I think, just as from my vantage point, 10 years a resident of Mississippi, that Mississippi has made enormous strides in the issue of race relations. In no way do I suggest it's no longer an issue. I am suggesting that the issue is an issue where we've made enormous progress, and I am increasingly optimistic. Even the panel today is evidence of reason for optimism. We're talking more, we're fellowshipping more, we have a greater confidence in one another. A lot of the suspicions are being eliminated and broken down. I think in Mississippi, among pastors that I know, black and white, and I fellowship with a group that's interracial once a month in Clinton, we have great confidence in each other. We have a great affection for one another. I don't believe among pastors that racism is as profound an issue as some would suggest it is. I would suggest we made enormous progress. And I remain optimistic that things are going to continue to do better. As far as the appearance of Mississippi around the country, I would suggest that some of these other brothers would answer that question better than me. But I would suggest even that is changing for the positive. But I would defer to their judgment.
Mississippi is the only state from the old Confederacy that still uses the rebel symbol as part of its state flag.
It doesn't bother me one way or the other.
Take it down! This week, the debate has heated up again after the suspect in the Charleston church massacre posed with Confederate flags and several different pictures.
So where do you stand on whether there should be a change, whether we should stick with the current flag?
I feel that there should be a change. We're from the hospitality state. That's what we like to brag about, is that we're hospitable. We're the most hospitable in the nation, yet we're holding on to a relic.
And it's offensive to a third of our population. And, we're not trying to, there's no effort to take away flags and bumper stickers and T-shirts by people who want them.
I see the makings of the Philip Gunn fan club all around here. That's great. Thank y'all for being here.
The first statewide official to call for changing the state flag.
It is true that I voiced my opinion about the flag a few weeks ago and made my opinions known.
What do you think about changing the flag?
Why? Why change? Does it need changing?
Are you Confederate or are you Southern?
And Dr. Blaylock is from South Carolina, correct? Being a southern state as well, going through some things over the past few months, what did you think coming to Mississippi and dealing with racial reconciliation?
I serve as pastor at the First Baptist Church in Charleston, South Carolina, where in June of this year in our city, we were rocked by the horrible hate crime, the murder of 9 innocent people in an African American church in downtown Charleston. And the pain of that experience for our city, people from every background, people from every corner of society, we felt the oneness of the pain. And I regret that it took that kind of heartbreak to have so many in the white community to join in the sense of pain that's felt because of racism in communities of color. But I will say this, it was the testimony of 9 families after the killing, 2 days after the killing at a bond hearing, where one after the other they expressed forgiveness and showed the grace of God to a wanton killer. And that moment of grace shared to our city and really to the world was transformative. Enough so that the white community, it was the white Christian community, that spoke up and said, let's move the flag. the Confederate flag off the State House grounds because it symbolizes the pain that so many black people in our state felt. And so I see in Mississippi so many good things happening. I see Mission, Mississippi. And I'm not from here, so I'm not telling you what to do. But my recommendation would be for the white community to say, let's change the flag. It represents pain.
It is a perfect segue. Seeing that, what happened in Charleston, South Carolina certainly reignited, I believe, the debate here in Mississippi over the state flag and what it represents here.
If you had to vote today, would you vote to leave the flag up or to take it down?
I will vote to leave it up. I think the flag and any of the symbols that we have are part of our heritage.
If it's divisive, we're all one state, it probably needs to be considered anyway to change the flag.
I think race relations can improve in this state, and if the state taking down the state flag it would help, I think we should do it.
It ain't the flag that's doing nothing. It's the people heart. They got it in their heart, to be doing. It ain't the flag ain't doing that. Flag don't mean nothing.
So you don't have a problem with the state flag?
No, I don't have a problem with it. Well, I'm not like a governmental person, so I'm like a hippie, so it really doesn't matter to me about the flag or not. I'm still gonna be me, whether it's a flag flying or it ain't one flying.
Yes, ma'am. Are you born and raised in Mississippi?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd vote to leave it like it is. Yeah. I don't know. I see the other side of the deal, but I think I just leave it like it is. Yeah.
So if you were the only person voting to change the Mississippi state flag, take it down and change it or leave it up, how would you vote?
Or if I was just going to do it, I just said, let it stay there, because it ain't the flag. Flag ain't going to do nothing but fly. It ain't going to do nothing.
Over the past few months, we've done a couple of unscientific polls at 16 WAPT. We asked viewers to call in and tell us whether they thought the Confederate flag is offensive. Back in June, with almost 12,000 votes, we had 46% say yes, it is offensive, 54% say no. A few weeks later, when South Carolina lawmakers decided to take down the Confederate symbol, we asked viewers if Mississippi should. 60% of our viewers said no.
We want to hear some more reaction from some of the other pastors about the flag here in Mississippi, since it still has that Confederate emblem on it. What are your thoughts about our flag in our state?
The flag is certainly a very controversial issue here in Mississippi. I believe, however, on a very personal level, the flag does not offend me at all. I mean, I'm simply not offended by it. But there are so many people who are. And because they are, I believe that it is important for the elected officials in our state, as well as those who have the awesome responsibility of helping to provide leadership for our state, to be sensitive to the fact, if I may get real biblical at this point, that if eating meat offends my brother, I won't eat the meat. It's just that simple. I believe that the Apostle Paul says clearly, there isn't anything wrong inherently with the meat. But if it causes my brother to stumble, then I won't eat it. I think those of us who are part of the Christian community, I think have got to argue that because of the history and heritage of the flag and what it does to offend so many, that it's time for Mississippi and all of our elected officials and everybody that's in this state, I believe, to argue that because of that and because it offends so many. In fact, if I were to preach a sermon, which I don't have time to do, I would argue that the Apostle Paul, in the language he uses, says emphatically, not that I won't eat this specific meat, but I won't eat any meat, because what's important is for me to make sure that I don't cause my brother to stumble. That's why I think the flag needs to go.
Mississippians against changing the state flag sum up their sentiments in 3 words. It's about heritage.
Well, it's been something in our families for generations, so why you want to take it out?
We don't want them to take our flag and just showing support for our Confederate flag.
Because it's our history. It tells people who we are. We are Mississippians.
Personally, I think the media would stay out of it. Things would get a lot better.
What do you mean? What does that mean?
Over the past 4 months, hundreds have gathered in support of the Stars and Bars at pro-flag rallies at the state capitol.
Trying to get people together, get them involved, get them excited, let them know that there's something going on to try to save the flag.
They've also protested at the Old Capitol Museum and the Vicksburg National Military Park, which no longer sells items with the rebel flag on them.
My thing is, that flag's part of my history. It's not going anywhere. They can quit selling them, they can quit making them, but they're not going to disappear.
I think that we've come a long way under that flag, and I believe that if we were to try to change it, that really creates way more dissension.
We aren't backing up no more. We done gave up as many symbols as we're going to allow. Ole Miss, they've lost everything. Ole Miss, they lost all their symbols.
The flag debate has been brewing for years. Talk intensified this past summer after a young white man murdered 9 black people inside a South Carolina church. The suspected shooter, seen here posing with photos of the Confederate flag, said he hoped the killings would spark a race war.
You think the Confederate flag had something to do with his hate? Is that what you say?
The flag, it didn't kill those people, and it just don't make no sense why they want to take it down.
The state legislature adopted the current flag in 1894, some 30 years after the Civil War ended. Since that time, flag defenders say the KKK and other white supremacist groups have misused the Stars and Bars to promote hate.
It represented the Confederacy States of America, not racism or the KKK. Those groups came and took and hijacked that flag like they hijacked the cross in the United States flag.
If anybody's offended by it,
yes, ma'am.
Well, I don't want nobody to be offended by it, and we don't want to be offended by what they do. We just want our rights like everybody thinks they got their rights.
Others say Mississippians settled the flag fight 14 years ago.
I think it should be left alone because people voted 65% back in 2001 for it. I think I ought to leave it alone, leave it like it is.
A lot of people ask, what do you see when you see that flag? I don't see racism. I see heritage. Most of all, I see home.
That's why I believe that those who in power in this state ought to take the position. We understand that there is this debate about history and heritage, but the bottom line is at some point we've got to say we need to focus on the future of our state, and that we need to say there is hope for this state to get beyond all of the ugliness, and the flag is a symbol of that for so many. That's why I believe that the flag, perhaps without a doubt, ought to be changed.
And now you have a group that says we ought to let the people vote as to how the legislature should spend education money, but we shouldn't let the people vote when it comes to choosing the state flag. I don't think you can have it both ways.
I hope we will not go back to all of the hullabaloo of a referendum. I hope the legislature will step up now and act on it and do it, and I think everybody will be glad to get it behind them.
I think that it needs to be, the legislature needs to consider changing. They need to step up and do it. I don't know if they're probably kick it out to a vote, maybe of the people, but I think it's a decision for the legislature.
I will not act in another film.
I wouldn't dare just blame Governor Bryant, and I don't think this is about blame. I just think that we have to see this as an opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to rebrand ourselves as Mississippians.
I'm not tone deaf to that conversation, but if you look at South Carolina, one of the competitors we've really had over the last 8 years has been South Carolina. And while they've been taking industries that oftentimes we are in competition with that go to South Carolina, while Governor Haley rightfully so has been bragging about that, they've been flying the battle flag over their capital.
I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and from my vantage point, knowing about the Ministry of Mission Mississippi and their work over the years, I've seen great strides and been encouraged about the work that's going on in racial reconciliation in Mississippi. And as they echo the same sentiments as I talk about the greatest commandment revival in our nation, I'm happy to see what God is doing in Mississippi.
I'm from Mobile, Alabama, and I'm a part of a racial reconciliation effort there, and Mission Mississippi has informed us, encouraged us, coached us through that process. So, in fact, Alabama is following Mississippi's lead.
How do you think race relations are in 2015 in Mississippi?
Better, but I don't think that's, it's still, I guess, fractured to a degree.
Trying to finance, trying to do more business.
You say sometimes you feel like the people feel like you're under them?
Like I should be under them because I'm in the minority. So
how do they make you feel that way?
Well, they're very rude, or they put rules for me that probably they won't pull for other people. It's like, if you don't get here at a certain time, we can process that, or so that's how I'm feeling. In a lot of times that is like I shouldn't be helping you. You're a Hispanic lady.
I think it's kind of mellowing, kind of settling in, but it's not really too bad in Mississippi. Everybody, the younger generation, they're catching on. It's going to be fine.
Do you think we're better off now? And by we, I mean all races, all people, now versus back in the day?
We are better off. It's definitely a change. I can see a change coming. It's in the air. It's changing.
Actually from Canada.
From Canada? Oh, wow. Mississippi compared to Canada or other places in the world?
I wouldn't live anywhere else in this world. I love Mississippi.
How do you think our race relations are here versus other places?
I think here we just make things work. It's the South. Everybody's friendly, and I mean, we're the hospitality state. Bottom line, everybody's hospitable to me and everybody else. I don't complain a lot, so embarrassed.
Today has been about moving forward and getting better together. Today has been about trying to make a statement in this nation that it's time for the churches in the United States of America to stand up, those of us that believe in the power of the gospel, and not only simply converse the gospel, but demonstrate the gospel of Jesus Christ to the world. And just as the pastor from Charleston mentioned a moment ago, Pastor Marshall, it should not take tragedy in our nation to call the church to doing what God already has called us to do. And that is to make a difference in this world and to offer people forgiveness and hope for the future. And that's what this is all about today.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate your patience with us. I know y'all have done this.
Well, one thing that we've learned is that there's a palpable feeling of hope for race relations in Mississippi. Thank you for joining us.